The world today seems to be changing very quickly. Shifts going on in so many different sectors of our society. Technology, AI, the recent elections in the United States, with many unexpected twists and turns, uncertainties, both in America and the world over. What does all this portend? What does all this indicate? When you see so many different unexpected and unprecedented changes, where is this leading to? Are we experiencing a paradigm shift? That's what we'll be discussing. Please join me in this important conversation because it affects not only the globe but each one of us. Because the more you can anticipate where we're headed, the more you can prepare and indeed play a part in the very unfolding of this drama. Now, there are different ways we can look at the future. Some have an apocalyptic view. Others have a very beautiful utopian view. So please join me. Are we experiencing a paradigm shift? Hi, this is Simon Jacobson, and we will be discussing, are we experiencing a paradigm shift? This program is dedicated in honor of Yuri Pikover. When we look around at the world today, fast-pacing changes seem to be like the dominant headline in every sector of society. Technology, the changes that we've gone through, the different shifts, now AI, and all the opportunities that it will open up. On the political scene, recent election here in the United States of President Trump, many different unexpected and surprising twists and turns. You look at the world around, we see wars being fought in the Middle East and Ukraine. And again, no one knows where it's headed. Much volatility. Not to in any way diminish or minimize the great blessings that we experience, but there are many, many changes. Whenever you see such shifts, especially unexpected ones, so if someone were to ask you, can you predict what will be tomorrow? What will be in a year from now, 2 years from now? Will we have self-driving cars? Will AI replace many of the vital activities that we do today? Will the life be better? Will it be worse? Very few people can really make an accurate prediction. So what does that tell us when there's so many unknowns and uncertainties? Well, the first thing it tells us that the world is in flux, and yes, we are experiencing a shift from one state to another. This is called a paradigm shift. Sometimes you see it in history, when there are real dramatic events that are taking place. So it's obvious that something is happening. World War II would be an example. World War I would be an example. The Russian Revolution. Sometimes you don't see it in an immediate event. You see it in an accumulation of many events. Since the turn of the millennium, which means when we entered the 21st century, 24 years ago, almost 25 years ago, I've been speaking in my classes and my programs about a shift that was becoming quite obvious. We all, of course, know, whether it's 1994 or sometime around then, when the internet became mainstream. I mean, it was around and it developed, but when it really became websites, email, and that led to a whole series of developments with search engines, ultimately Google, YouTube, Amazon, and the big monsters today, what they call the four horsemen or whatever you want to call them, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Google. Today they have different names, Alphabet and other names out there. All of them in the area of technology. How the iPhone, the smartphone has changed life. Amazon has disrupted the retail industry, how we do business, and the changes continue to accelerate. Talk about electric cars, self-driving cars, AI. Where is that headed? The interesting thing is whenever you have changes, there's always a clash between the old world order and the new one arising. Often the clash is around the commercial clash, around money. Who's going to control the purse strings? You all remember the mice of the music industry with Napster, free music, until that was somewhat resolved. But it definitely create a major shift of how music is distributed. And that has impacted many other industries. Talk about the politics. There's no question there are shifts taking place. The Middle East, with the Abraham Accords several years ago, a new shift took place. A peace agreement between Israel and its long-standing enemies. Now, since October 7th, which really was a continuation of hostilities that were there before, but it's exploded. And we all know it has to be resolved in some way. Where is that headed? The interesting thing about all these different changes is, have we changed? We still need love. Children need to be nurtured and validated. We all seek purpose in some way in life. We want happiness. There are values, there are elements in life that are never changing. Because if you think about it, all these changes are really the environment around us. You can call it the platforms. But the human being is fundamentally not changed at all. We can be distracted more. We have new challenges, new opportunities. But the fundamentals of what we need in life, that has affected me very deeply, because with all these shifts, a big part of what I do is to make sure to remember and remind people that you still remain the center of your universe. And whatever's happening around you can either help or challenge or impede your way, but it doesn't change who you fundamentally are. On the contrary, with all these different distractions and all these different forces at work, it's even more important to find your center. So think of it like you're on a ship at sea. Things are calm, great. But then a storm comes your way. And the storm starts causing your ship to go this direction, that direction, to and fro, almost deluging you. That's when you need the strongest possible ship to know how to maintain your balance and equilibrium and to navigate through the storms. When I say storms, I don't necessarily always mean negative ones. I mean changes. What I find as one of the biggest challenges in a ever increased changing world, ever faster, accelerated changing world, is can we maintain that equilibrium? Because that's the key to really moving forward and not becoming a victim or not becoming a product of the forces around us. But the changes themselves do reflect a shift in existence, a shift in the world. When I say a shift, I don't just mean on a superficial level. It's not just how we do business. It's how we look at ourselves and the world around us. Just use a most recent example, the 20th century. We'll go 100 years ago. We're now about to enter the year 2025, the end of 2024. Let's go back to 1924, 1925, just to use a round number, century. So we were right then, after World War I, without really knowing what's coming next, which would be, compared to World War I, a complete earthquake. I don't even want to use that word, even more cataclysmic World War II. That's where we were. So there was a lull at the time. We're talking about also close to the time of the Depression. But looking back, we see clearly that part of the century, especially the first half of the 20th century, with the Russian Revolution. And then World War I, World War II, there was a tremendous paradigm shift. First of all, the destruction that it brought. And then an unprecedented renaissance, post-1945, that has continued to impact us till this day. There has not been another major war of that caliber ever since. Now, I'm not in any way suggesting, God forbid, that we're going to go through anything like that. But you learn from that. You learn how even something so cataclysmic, so horrendous, so horrific and tragic, over 100 million people were killed in both world wars. Of course, the Holocaust. Not just the numbers, but the sheer inhumanity, the sheer scope, the sheer unfathomable behavior. And it has led to a better world. No question about it. Sometimes when you hit rock bottom, it opens you up. So when there are changes, it's wise to step back and looking and seeing a pattern. As I said, since the year 2000, starting with 9/11. So even though for many of us it may be a distant memory, but it created change. A new vulnerability, a new awareness of how extremism affects our lives. Just to give an example, security at airports. We take it for granted and we don't even notice it maybe. Didn't come out of nowhere. And other things that have affected our culture. But especially technology. On one hand, created unbelievable wealth, unbelievable opportunities, but also created tremendous challenges. Have relationships gotten better? Has abuse gotten worse? Because remember, the human being does not change. Junk in, junk out, that's what they used to say. So technology, what it does is amplify, magnifies whatever you have. But clearly you cannot ignore the effects on the culture and society. In one way you can say what has changed dramatically is mass events. Whether it's mass joy or mass hysteria, everything is broadcast now, quickly, fast. Everyone knows about everyone else. We don't even understand the implications of all of that. Yes, the new addictions it has created. Online addictions, screen addictions, gaming. Because we're really in its infancy. Technology, in that sense, modern technology, online technology is really in its infancy. But again, when you put together the dots, you connect the dots, it's definitely a sign of shifts and changes. So I go back into the sources. I go back into history. I say when you step back and are not distracted or seduced by the moment, there is a paradigm shift taking place. I would say, and I would categorize the shift as being the beginning of a new revolution. We talk about revolutions, the classic three revolutions: agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and then the information revolution or computer revolution. The fourth frontier, and maybe final frontier, is the spiritual revolution. As more and more time is freed up in our lives, because we have machines taking over, because things that took hours can take today seconds. As our material lives become more and more comfortable in a way, you don't have to go shopping, you get it delivered to your home. I'm not even talking about the new developments that will happen in the next few years and decades. What happens with us? There's going to be a bigger and bigger void to fill the vacuum of purpose in our lives, of meaning in our lives. What I call the spiritual revolution. Your soul. Because your body will be taken care of. You won't need to spend 9 hours a day sweating under the sun to bring home a bushel of potatoes or rice and trade off the rest. Speaking figuratively, the same idea with so many other factors in life. And inside each of us there's a deep hunger and thirst for meaning, for transcendence. However, whatever form it takes. To put it in maybe more, we'll call it more relationship terms, for relationships, for connections. We are fundamentally connected people. 9 months in our mother's womb, we spent completely connected, nurtured, protected in the embryonic fluids of our mother's womb. In our early infancy and even early years, we need connection. The connection through our parents, our siblings, friends, society. But connections are not just getting friends on Facebook, an artificial or superficial version, but means a true connection, someone you can trust, someone that trusts you. Relationships are suffering tremendously because of this dissonance between the ever-growing technology and connections on a communication level, meaning communications technology, technological communications, and the ever-growing disparity of personal connections. I remember in the early days of the internet, there was a rage, called, I think, Second Life, where you can literally create another life for yourself with another personality, with a whole set of variables. That's not you, but you live vicariously through that. How many people live vicariously today through sports and sports teams and heroes, through Hollywood, through Netflix, through cinema, media? What about you? There's no way that we can avoid the need for that. There's no question that the growing rate of addictions is to fill a void. People have a void in their lives. And to relieve some of the anxiety and some of that existential angst, we do whatever it takes. That's where there's the opportunity of the true future. A spiritual revolution of meaning, of purpose. So all the factors, everything going on today, all the disruptions and the shifts are leading to that new revolution. Like it is with all things. You can either resist it, ignore it, or be part of it, or help make it happen. The usual tendency is to just stay with the status quo, path of least resistance, and avoid anything until you have no choice. But imagine being ahead of the curve and being able to anticipate, being able to recognize, and saying, hey, there's something here that I can transform my life. To begin feeding our souls even more than we do our bodies. And that means feeding your soul means through particular behavior, particular actions. I call it a spiritual spa. Immersing your soul, SPA, study, prayer, action. Cognitive, emotional, and behavioral conditioning. To get your mind every day into a more soulful, a more transcendent place. That's by reading, by engaging in conversation, participating in a new class that stimulates and challenges your mind to think more ethereally, in a more sublime way. The second is on an emotional level. A prayer, a poem, a song, an emotional interaction to get the muscles working, exercising your emotional muscles. But emotions that are healthy emotions. Not anger and bitterness, but love, kindness, gratitude, sharing, warmth, caring. And finally, behavioral conditioning. To make sure that every day you increase in acts of goodness and kindness. Whether it's giving someone some charity, whether it's helping someone volunteering, whether it's sharing a kind word, whether it's sending a beautiful text or social media message to others, comforting other souls. These are all forces that, but firstly, exercise and condition your own soul and get you living a life from the inside out instead of the outside in, meaning instead of reacting to whatever's going on around you, being proactive from within, inside out. And secondly, it brings more light into the world around you. It spiritualizes the material corner of your life. And in doing so, we release the tremendous energy that lies trapped in the material world. Spiritualizing the spiritualizing matter. Turning matter into energy. That is the fourth revolution that we're upon. And if you think about all the, as I said, disruptions and changes, you could see them as just being uncomfortable, a nuisance, which basically upend your security blankets and your comfort zones, or you could see it as the opening of a brave new world. I know I'm using Huxley's actually apocalyptic version, but I mean in a positive way. Fresh air, new horizons, a new way of looking at the world in a more unified way, which essentially is ultimately the scientific view. All technology is about connecting things, finding the common denominator, eliminating the gap of time and space, finding unity. But the ultimate unity is the unity between ourselves, where we recognize that each of us is an indispensable musical note in a large cosmic composition. This has to become the awareness of every man, woman, and child in our lives. This is how the world changes. Everything else are the machines, the instruments, tools. Your tools don't define you. You should define your tools. You should use your tools to define and express yourself. Like I always point out, someone asks you, who are you? And you give them you give them your business card. That's not who you are, that's what you do. So people will say, well, I've been doing it so long, what I do has become who I am. No, who you are should define what you do. The captain of the ship should tell the ship where to go, not the other way around. Your soul should be guiding and directing your body, not your body directing your soul. That's the shift that we need to get through. Now, in times past, that may not have been possible due to actually being overwhelmed by the material responsibilities that we have. So I understand we're still addicted to money and to power. So in that sense, that's the old paradigm that still controls us. So now maybe you can make more of it in less time. But the real shift is where you see money and power as simply a means, not an end in itself. Yes, where the power of love is stronger than the love of power. I firmly believe that's exactly where we're headed. But many of us will resist because we just are accustomed to the status quo. Inertia is our biggest enemy, as is apathy. So we need to wake each other up, and that's exactly the point of this conversation. To recognize that the disruptions and the shifts shouldn't just lead us to become more myopic and more narrow-minded, where people get polarized by political differences in pathetic and tragic ways. I don't even want to spell them out. But to rise and become a greater person and realize these shifts are actually meant to be an opportunity to bring a new order into the world. And it begins with you. To look at others and say, he's to blame, she's to blame, that one's to blame, this party, that party, this event. That's not the way of a leader. You look at what's going on, you see what you cannot control, their circumstances not up to you, but you control how you navigate, your attitude, your ship in the sea, no matter what is changing, you control where your ship will go. So we need to join forces, put our heads together, our hearts and souls together, and figure out ways that we can teach ourselves and our children and our families and our friends and our colleagues to take this attitude. Take control of your life. And you begin by singing your song, by recognizing your calling, your mission. So much more to say, and I will be talking about it in coming classes and programs, and I invite you, and I invite this to be a conversation. I'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts. And please share, because at the end of the day, our sharing is what creates the butterfly ripple effect that helps facilitate and perpetuate and accelerate this new paradigm shift into a better world for each of us, for all of us, to experience personal and global redemption. Redemption from what? Not to be slaves to our passions and not to be slaves to our materialism, but to see ourselves as servants, if you wish, as agents, as ambassadors of the infinite, of light, in helping forge and shape and create a far better world. That's how we look at the shifts and changes in our lives. Thank you so much. Be blessed and be well. This has been Simon Jacobson, Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel, and share. I'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you again, and be well.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.
Scattamo stanotti, viri come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla. Gira musica, gira e non si ferma, come una galla do vento aita. Attira con narina, tamburello e abbacia come sua figliola. Scattano stanotti, viri come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla. Sinni e tunu, i voti si danno, tu na poco gli peputia. Sinda fettunu, i cappotti russi e si ricordano da notti buona. Scattamo stanotti, vini come balla, su te fanali chi si scidica. balla stanotte, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna.